Something changed at American airports this year, and most travelers over 60 have no idea it happened. The Transportation Security Administration quietly rolled out a series of new policies, fees, and enforcement measures that are catching older Americans completely off guard. These are not minor adjustments or simple updates to existing rules. They represent fundamental shifts in how airport security operates, and they create financial and logistical traps that disproportionately affect seniors. What follows are 10 specific traps you need to know about before your next flight in 2026. The first trap involves identification, and it carries a $45 penalty. Starting February 1st of this year, the TSA began enforcing strict real ID requirements with zero tolerance. If you arrive at the security checkpoint without a compliant license featuring that small star in the corner, you face two options. You can either be turned away from your flight entirely, or you can pay $45 for what the TSA calls Confirm ID verification. This fee buys you a temporary pass valid for just 10 days. After that window closes, you must pay again if you still lack proper identification. The trap specifically targets older Americans because many seniors renewed their licenses by mail over the past several years. Mail renewals do not include real ID upgrades in most states. That means millions of travelers over 65 are carrying licenses that look perfectly valid but will not pass TSA scrutiny in 2026. The Department of Homeland Security estimates that roughly 30% of Americans still lack compliant identification, with seniors representing the largest demographic in that group. Here is where the trap gets even worse for older women specifically. Obtaining a real ID requires proving every name change since birth. If you were born with one surname, married and took another, divorced and changed again, or remarried, you need documentation for each transition. Many women over 60 have been through multiple name changes across 50 or 60 years. Tracking down marriage certificates, divorce decrees, and other paperwork from decades ago can cost hundreds of dollars in document retrieval fees. Some states charge additional processing fees that push the total cost well above $100 just to get an identification card that should be free. The second trap involves biometric verification failures that older travelers experience at significantly higher rates. The TSA expanded facial recognition technology to 65 airports this spring as part of its pre-check touchless ID program. While younger travelers breeze through these checkpoints by simply looking at a camera, seniors encounter frequent matching failures. Aging changes facial structure in ways that confuse recognition algorithms. Wrinkles, sagging skin, and changes around the eyes create discrepancies between current appearance and older passport photos. When the system fails to match your face, you get pulled aside for manual verification. This process adds 10 to 15 minutes to your screening time and often involves additional questioning. For seniors who enrolled in TSA PreCheck specifically to avoid long lines and hassles, this defeats the entire purpose of the program. Worse still, some travelers report being flagged repeatedly trip after trip, creating a pattern of delays that makes flying increasingly stressful. The third trap catches seniors who need to renew their TSA PreCheck membership. If you enrolled 5 years ago when PreCheck first became widely available, your renewal is due this year. The standard online renewal costs around $70. However, many older travelers discover they cannot complete online renewal because their fingerprints no longer scan properly. Age causes fingerprint ridges to wear down, and dry skin makes impressions harder to read. Biometric rejection forces you to visit an enrollment center in person, where fees jump to between $78 and $85. Factor in transportation costs and parking fees to reach these centers, and renewal becomes a significant expense. The fourth trap involves power banks and portable chargers that many seniors carry for medical devices. Lithium-ion batteries must travel in carry-on luggage only. They cannot be packed in checked bags under any circumstances because fire suppression systems in cargo holds cannot adequately contain lithium battery fires. Most travelers know this rule exists, but the enforcement details create problems for seniors. Power banks exceeding 100 watt-hours require advanced airline approval. Many portable chargers marketed for charging medical devices, laptops, and multiple phones exceed this threshold. If TSA discovers an unapproved high-capacity battery in your carry-on, they will confiscate it regardless of how much you paid or how essential it seems for your trip. The fifth trap emerges from inconsistent enforcement of screening procedures across different airports. TSA recently hired thousands of new officers nationwide to reduce wait times. While this should help long-term, it creates short-term problems as inexperienced agents learn protocols. What passed through security at your departure airport may trigger additional screening at your connection. Bags packed identically to previous trips suddenly get flagged. Medications that never raised questions before prompt lengthy inspections. This inconsistency frustrates experienced travelers who thought they understood the system. For seniors managing complex medication regimens or medical equipment, unpredictable enforcement adds significant stress to every journey. Navigating these constantly changing rules can feel overwhelming, especially when you are trying to manage medications, mobility aids, and all the other details that come with traveling after 60. That frustration is exactly why I put together the Airport Survival Guide. It walks you through everything from packing strategies that prevent confiscation to handling unexpected fees and dealing with medical emergencies during travel. Thousands of travelers have already used it to take the stress out of flying. You will find the link in the description below and pinned at the top of the comments. The sixth trap involves medication quantities that trigger extended screening delays. TSA permits liquid medications exceeding the standard 3.4-ounce limit, but you must declare them separately before screening begins. Many seniors assume their prescription labels provide sufficient documentation and simply place medication bags on the conveyor belt without comment. This passive approach often triggers secondary inspection. Agents may open every container, swab for residue, and question you about each medication. The process can take 20 minutes or longer during busy periods. Proper declaration before screening typically reduces this to under 5 minutes. The seventh trap catches seniors through airline dress codes that have grown stricter throughout 2025 and into 2026. Spirit Airlines updated its passenger conduct rules in January 2025 with specific prohibitions against inadequate clothing, see-through garments, and exposed private areas. Other carriers, including American, Delta, and United, have similar restrictions buried in their contracts of carriage. While these rules exist primarily to address younger travelers wearing revealing outfits, enforcement remains entirely subjective. Gate agents make split-second decisions about what constitutes appropriate coverage. A woman named Tanasia Grayer made national news in July 2025 when Spirit denied her boarding in Miami because agents deemed her shorts too short. She had worn similar shorts on previous flights without incident. For seniors, the lesson is clear. Clothing that seems perfectly acceptable to you may violate an airline employee's interpretation of adequacy. The eighth trap involves carry-on bag enforcement that has tightened dramatically. Airlines now routinely measure bags at the gate, and anything exceeding posted dimensions draws excess fees. The measurements include wheels, handles, and external pockets. That roller bag you have used for years may suddenly fail inspection, because the tape measure now includes every protrusion. Basic economy fares often restrict you to a single small personal item that must fit under the seat. If you purchased a cheap ticket without reading the fine print, you could face fees exceeding $100 at the gate when your carry-on does not qualify. The ninth trap targets seniors who struggle with digital requirements. Many airlines have moved to digital-first policies that penalize travelers who cannot or prefer not to use smartphone apps. If your phone battery dies before reaching the checkpoint, you cannot display your mobile boarding pass. If you never downloaded the airline app in the first place, you may not have access to your boarding pass at all. Some budget carriers now charge $25 to $45 to print a paper boarding pass at the airport counter. For seniors who grew up in an era of paper tickets and human agents, this digital penalty feels particularly unfair. The 10th trap involves wheelchair and mobility device screening that has become more invasive. TSA discovered prohibited items hidden inside mobility devices over the years, prompting more thorough inspection protocols. Every bag and pouch attached to a wheelchair must be removed and placed on the conveyor belt separately. Agents may swab your wheelchair for explosive residue. If you cannot transfer out of your chair easily, screening becomes a lengthy ordeal that can take 15 to 20 minutes. Travelers who arranged wheelchair assistance through their airline sometimes find that assistants disappear during this extended screening, leaving them stranded at the checkpoint without help to reach their gate. Beyond these 10 traps, seniors face additional challenges at nearly every stage of the airport experience. The pace of change has accelerated dramatically over the past 2 years. Rules that seemed settled for decades suddenly shift with little warning. Fees appear where none existed before. Technology that promises convenience instead creates barriers for those unfamiliar with smartphones and apps. The fundamental problem is that airport security was designed for efficiency, not accommodation. The system processes hundreds of millions of passengers annually. Individual needs and circumstances get lost in that volume. Seniors who travel infrequently find themselves blindsided by changes that regular flyers absorbed gradually. By the time you reach the checkpoint, learning the new rules becomes an expensive and stressful experience. Preparation remains your strongest defense against these traps. Check your identification immediately. If your license lacks that real ID star, begin the upgrade process now rather than waiting until your next trip. Allow extra time at every airport. An hour before boarding may have been sufficient in previous years, but 90 minutes to 2 hours provides necessary buffer for unexpected screening delays. Keep all medications in original prescription containers with visible labels. Declare liquid medications verbally to the first agent you encounter. Pack conservatively. Choose clothing that leaves no room for subjective interpretation. Verify your carry-on dimensions against current airline requirements. Documentation protects you when things go wrong. Photograph valuable items before traveling. Keep receipts for expensive electronics. If agents confiscate something, document the circumstances immediately. File complaints through official TSA channels when procedures seem improper. These records support insurance claims and may prevent similar problems for future travelers. Technology frustrations will likely continue through 2026 and beyond as airports push toward fully digital operations. Consider downloading airline apps before your travel date. Charge all devices fully. Carry a small compliant power bank to maintain battery life throughout your journey. Print backup copies of boarding passes and confirmation emails whenever possible. These redundancies ensure that technological failures do not strand you at the checkpoint. The human element matters too. TSA officers process hundreds of passengers daily under significant pressure. Patience and courtesy typically produce better outcomes than frustration and complaints. When problems arise, remain calm and ask questions rather than arguing. Request a supervisor if you believe procedures are not being followed correctly. Most agents want to help travelers reach their flights successfully, but they cannot bend rules that exist for security reasons. Flying does not have to mean surrendering to confusion and unexpected costs. Armed with accurate information about current policies, you can navigate airport security confidently. The traps exist, but they catch primarily those who walk in unprepared. Your awareness of these 10 specific issues puts you ahead of most travelers walking through American airports this year. Share this information with friends and family members who plan to travel. The changes affecting 2026 remain poorly publicized through official channels. Most seniors learn about new fees and requirements only when they encounter them directly at the checkpoint. By spreading awareness, we can help more travelers avoid the stress and expense of walking into these traps unprepared. Thank you for spending this time with me today. If this information helped clarify what has changed at airport security, I would appreciate you subscribing to this channel. Hit that notification bell so you receive updates whenever new rules affect travelers over 60. Forward this video to anyone you know with upcoming travel plans. Together we can make sure no one gets blindsided by policies they never knew existed. Safe travels to you and everyone you care about.